Welcome to the Traveller 2025 Mayday event. I'm your host, Frank Succardi of CyborgPrime Games. I'm here today with my friend Josh Bell, who is the creator of TravellerMap. Welcome, Josh.
Hey, Frank. Happy to be doing this with you.
Great, thanks for coming. Jesus, hold on a second. I might have to start this over because somehow my system sounds turned back on. Actually, I shouldn't care about that because they're on their own track and I can delete them later. All right, so we don't have to start over. All right, Josh. Welcome and thanks for coming. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, how you got into Traveller and the idea for coming up with TravellerMap to begin with?
Sure. So I'm from Calgary, Alberta, Canada, which, it's a cold, desolate wasteland. But growing up there, I was lucky enough to go to a school that had a lot of people into role-playing games. And also right near the school was an amazing gaming store called the Sentry Box. And it is still one of the largest gaming stores on the planet with a huge role-playing game section. Miniatures, board games, books, everything. And at the current location, you can even go upstairs and there's a whole nother floor for just war games. And there's a whole other annex for card games. So it wasn't quite that big when I was going to school, but basically I was exposed to Traveller. I was exposed to Dungeons and Dragons and then Traveller in around grade 6, grade 7. And played a handful of games, but I was always a collector and wanted to explore this universe. So it really appealed to me, and I think the creators of the game did a good job of little tidbits, little mysteries made you interested in, what's this next thing? What's the secret of this place? What's the motivations behind this alien species? So it really attracted me, and I collected a bunch of stuff in the classic Traveller era. At some point, put it all into a box and forgot about it until years later.
And then you got reintroduced or reconnected with it?
It was at a half-price bookstore. By this time, I was living in the Seattle, Washington area. And saw a GURPS Traveller rulebook, picked that up and went, Traveller, I haven't thought about this in what era this was. Probably almost 15, 20 years. Hadn't thought about it. And let me dig up all my old stuff. Oh, this is so cool. And also what's happened to it in the meantime? I hadn't thought about something from my childhood. And then the internet was just starting to get good for being able to search, and started to look around in the early 2000s. What's out there? And wow, people have made all of these sectors available online. And as a computer nerd back in the 80s, as a teenager, wrote typed in listings and wrote code to try and generate sector maps and things, and thought, oh, this is so cool. I've told the story before, but this was right at the time that Google Maps came out, and I was looking for a project to build on the web, because I'd done some web development in the 90s, but this was nearly 10 years later, and I hadn't touched the web in a while. And can I make something like Google Maps, but for Traveller? And started prototyping something, and managed to get something up and running pretty quickly. One of the nice things is that the creators of Traveller loved computers. They were early adopters of computers in the 70s. And so a lot of Traveller data is really easy to manipulate with computers. All those giant tables, UPs. So it was easy to get first prototype up and running pretty quickly.
Cool. And what was that first prototype written in?
So a programming language called C#, which is kind of like Microsoft's version of Java. I actually worked at Microsoft at the time, and so, of course, let me try out Microsoft's technology, so their server technology and their programming technology. And I was, I hadn't been a web developer in a long time. I worked on desktop applications. So I really thought of the map site not as like a big HTML page or a collection of HTML pages, but like an application. It's just an application that happens to run in the web. And so it's a bunch of C# code on the server side that just generates images, and then some glue on the client side that assembles those into a page you can scroll around.
So this was like early active server pages.
So even active server pages, they were all about sort of building forms for e-commerce sites. So it was built using a tiny bit of that technology, but again, the site is about just requesting little bits of space and stitching those images together. So it used like the initial pages all had like .asp active server page endings on the URLs and the file names, but it wasn't really using that under the hood.
I see.
A few years later, as Microsoft evolved their stack, that they embraced that notion of you're really able to just build an application and you're not just tied to this like load a page, load another page, maintain state. So you can really just think of an application that's just serving up these little images.
Cool. So did you have any in those early days? Did you have any major hurdles that you ran into, or technological, or even mental blocks? Like how am I going to put this together?
Lots of different things to solve. The very first prototype was just, I didn't have any of the data, and so it was, can I just render a whole bunch of these map tiles together? And what I tried as the initial data was just a circle, and a circle spread across multiple map tiles, but did it all hold together? And then where do I get the data? Because there was not one true source of traveler data. It was, this one person's website that had a couple of files, and this collection that had overlapping files, but they differed. And so a lot of the work turned into a curation and sort of being an archivist or a historian, like why are there two different versions of this data? Where do they come from? What's the order? Oh, these ones are intentionally created to be 2 different years, even though it doesn't say it. Oh, this was what was originally uploaded by somebody at Digest Group, and then this is what somebody else added to it. Like the Digest Group had the values, but not the names, and then somebody else added names and some additional details. So really trying to track this down and track it over time so I could like attribute where everything came from. So that was more on the, on the data side. On the technical side, a lot of the work happened. I was lucky, and it was easy in a way that hasn't necessarily played out well over time, which is the Microsoft's like C#.NET tech stack for this was aimed initially at building desktop applications, which often have to do like image processing. Websites rarely have to do image processing. Usually all the image data is static. So it actually turned out to be really easy when those were combined to generate images on the fly and say, I want to draw some text at this angle and have it be translucent and draw some stars behind it and some routes on top of it. But that ended up almost limiting me, because now I'm stuck with this technology stack that nobody else on the planet is using. I was able to find ways to leverage other libraries that let me do things like generate PDFs so people can download high quality printable versions of maps, but it's still stuck with this. It works really well for exactly what I'm trying to do with it, but nobody else on the planet is using it, so it's sort of a dead-end technology for some things. Yeah, those were some of the initial hurdles.
And so is it hosted like on in the cloud, or do you host it on like a standard web server, or how does that work?
So a little bit of both. Because it's got this sort of not very common tech stack, I do have a hosting provider that hosts it, and their business model is hosting that kind of website. So they're not the giant in in the industry, but they do exactly what I need them to do, and I'm happy to pay them money to maintain the servers so that I don't have to. And they don't charge a whole bunch, and it works pretty well because the site doesn't get a whole lot of traffic. The grandiose vision for the future is like redo it all on a modern tech stack and move it into one of the major cloud providers like Amazon or Microsoft Azure or something like that.
Right.
That's a big engineering project.
Right. All right. Cool. Does it have an API? Is it extensible?
Yes and yes. So very much when I was putting it together, I was thinking, how do I make this so that I'm not the only one who's stuck writing all of the code that works with TravellerMap? So it was very carefully designed to be basically API first. So everything the site does is the web page asking the server for information. So, when you load up the site, it's basically the web page saying, give me a picture of this chunk of space. Give me a picture of this chunk of space. And then also interrogating it. So as you move your mouse over it, it's what's at this point in space? What's the name of the sector there? What's the name of the world there? And those all are what us nerds call APIs. So it's all just give me some information and you get some information back. And then the web page interprets that and turns it into something the user can see. And all those APIs are available for other people to use. So if you want to build, and people have done this, they build another website and they want to incorporate the information. They can hit those URLs and get the information back and present it the way they want it. They want to build like an iPad app, and they're letting the user enter their own data, create worlds, but they want TravellerMap to turn that raw data into a picture for them. They can do that using the API. There are folks who've worked on tools for virtual tabletops that can, do all sorts of things. Like the player's ship went from here to here, generate a map or generate routes between those. That's all stuff you can do on TravellerMap, but they built their own tools that work with how they expect their users to use it. So that's one part. And in terms of extensibility, the major way it's extensible is the cleanest, which is basically it's all just data sitting in files. So if somebody says, "Hey Josh, can you put my sector up?" I can just drop it in a directory somewhere and poke the server, and then it'll show up. It's not as easy as someone going and editing a wiki page, but you can make additions.
Cool. So while we were chatting earlier, you mentioned that you solved a big issue that you were having with the TravellerMap.
Solved a big issue, created a couple others, but yeah. So if you happen to listen to, I don't know if this was our previous talk or interview I did at TravellerCon USA a couple of years ago, both, I lamented the fact that, every once in a while the server just goes nuts and just gets into a state where I have to poke it with a stick. And I spent forever like, okay, here's what I think is going on. Let me change the code. That didn't make it better. Let me turn on this logging. Let me change the code. Did that make it better? No. Let me change the code some more. Did that make it better? Did that make it better? No. Okay, let me change the server configuration. Let me update this. Let me update that. Let me update that. Still, it was more maintainable, and I would write a tool that would like automatically just sort of turn it off and then on again every once in a while. And it was fine, but yeah. I then spent some time looking at it again recently and realized, one of those earlier steps where I said, I'll just turn on some logging. I turned on debug logging and left it on. So at some point over time, I had actually fixed the issue. But because debug logging was turned on, it wasn't debug mode. I'm not that sloppy. But this extra little bit of logging was turned on, and it was causing the same issue to occur for a completely different reason. It basically it would grow to a point where something
the log got so big it would crash or something. Or
a crash would have been great. But no, it was like something would just get wedged. It would hit 100% CPU or something. Anyway, when I finally realized, oh, this debug logging is turned on, let me turn that off. Boom, the site has been rock solid for 12 months.
Oh,
Longer
great.
It's been amazing. So I'm very happy. I've got a monitoring service that once a week sends me email and says, perfect week, perfect week, perfect week. And I'm like, ah.
Oh, good.
So that was good. That's not to say that everything is perfect. A change that I worked on actually with another contributor, they submitted a year ago, and I reviewed it with them, tested it. Apparently, I didn't test it quite enough. The site's had this minor little rendering glitch if you use the poster maker for the last year, where you'd get extra lines that you weren't supposed to. And I finally ran the appropriate tests because no, I don't have continuous integration tests on the site. I'm sorry, I'm a bad person. But finally noticed that yesterday and fixed it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, but no, I am a little bit sloppy. I was trying to change configuration just in this last week. I clicked the wrong button on my hosting provider, and DNS records, which are how everything goes wrong on the web, were broken. So it was like half an hour when the site was off, basically. And I realized as soon as I'd done it what had happened and was able to fix it. But it's one of these things that as soon as you break it, you don't notice immediately because it takes time for it to propagate out through the internet. And then as soon as you're well moved and you fix it, and it still takes time, like hours.
Right. So you're not sure if you fixed it.
Not sure if you fixed it. And people are constantly pinging and saying, Josh, the site's having problems. And I'm like, I think I fixed it, but I don't know.
I won't know for a couple hours. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a pain. So this year is going to be a 20th anniversary of TravellerMap?
The first public announcement of the site. There's a thing called the Traveller mailing list. And it was April 2005. I first announced, hey, I put this little thing together, come play with it. This was back in the day when this was before people used the Chrome web browser didn't exist. People were using Netscape. And the site was
I still accidentally call Firefox Netscape all the time.
And it was it looked a lot clunkier than it does now. It was still, you can still grab the mouse and drag it around. That part hasn't changed, but and that's I will update the UI, the user interface of the site to add things. It's been pretty stable because the design that I've got, I'm pretty happy with it. It sort of blends a very retro feel back to the classic Traveller days with modern web sensibilities. Like it used to have lots of UI around the side. If you've got old timers out there that remember MapQuest, it was kind of more like that.
Last time I logged on, I hadn't been on in a while, and I did notice it was a lot cleaner design.
And I'm a fan of good user interface, and so a lot of times when somebody says, I've got an idea, I'm like, okay, idea is good. Implementing the idea probably also pretty straightforward. Where do we put it so we don't overwhelm the user while still making it so people can discover it? And still, there's a lot in there that the site can do that people aren't aware of, and good tutorials might go a long way. People see things here.
You want to give us a tour?
Sure.
Cool.
We'll see this.
I happen to have it up on the screen.
Okay. Let me hit if you can see my mouse cursor, I'll hit the home button. And I think the first time you visit the site, this is what you'll see. Okay, now, just for the purposes of making sure we're all seeing the same thing, Frank, are you seeing me drag it around?
Yes.
Okay, great. Because my version of the video, I don't see it moving. So,
okay, I've got the Imperium. I've got. I can't see it because I have bad eyesight, but there's a planet dead center.
Yeah. Okay, so the first time you visit the site, you're probably going to see something like this. And this is intentionally evocative of one of the things I have in my box of Traveller stuff from my childhood, which was Game Designers Workshop gave away a poster that looked like this, just black starfield, red outlines, and some very tantalizing names. And I went to the Sentry box, and they were just giving them away. So I've got a couple of those, which I love. And there's stuff around the outside. In the upper left, there's a search box. The upper right, there's some buttons and menus. I'll dig into more of those. And yeah, it's like Google Maps or any other map sites. You can use the mouse and grab it. If you load it up on your phone, it works like an app on your phone. So everything that I'm going to do here with the mouse, you can do on your phone. But probably the most important thing we want to do is just search and zoom in. You can see it's got some names on here, and the names that you'll see, I'll zoom in slightly. These are names of sectors, and those are sectors where there's actually a book that you can go out and buy. A lot of the other sectors, there's some lore about them on the wiki. But if you want to find out about the Beyond, you can click on it. And here's one of the first things: is it'll just pop up this little box up here that tells you here's the name of what you're looking at. It's got a link directly to the wiki, some things you can download, and if you actually expand that, it's going to show you not as fully complete, but a pretty complete history of all of the work that's gone in from the 1980s until now about that sector and who's updated it. And these are sectors where the folks who are in charge of the destiny of Traveller, Mongoose Publishing, have books that you can go. And so I'm not going to click on it now, but this book, The Spinward Extents, talks about the Beyond sector. And so if you want to go support the authors, support the publishers, and learn more about the sector than just a map, I encourage you to click the link, check it out, get the ebook, get the paper book.
Are those dots that we're seeing at this level, are those sector capitals?
So there's a handful of different things. These dots here, where you see it's a capital or reference, I know it's hard to do. These are some of the important worlds in the lore of Traveller. So there's Zodane or Zodant, which is the capital of the Jordani consulate. There's Kyushu, the homeworld of the Aslan. There's Terra, also known as Earth. There's the homeworld of the Kakri and the Hivers. Some of the ones in the middle there's Capital, which is the capital of the Third Imperium. Reference, which is dead center on the map, because that's where literally the center of the Imperium is counted from. That's 0, on all the maps. And then this world up here, Regina, which is one of the prominent worlds in the Spinward Marches that's got a lot of history. And if you go up to the search box and just click on it, it actually links to all of those worlds as sort of just an example of search results.
Oh, cool.
Details. But if you just punch in Regina, it'll search. And it's a sloppy search, so it'll find some other things. And we can just click, and that takes us into Regina, in the Regina subsector of the Spinward Marches sector. And there it is, dead center. And you can, explore the neighborhood. Down at the bottom of the screen, it's already showing some more information that says, hey, if you want to find out more about the Spinward Marches, here's a book you can go buy about it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
I didn't notice that down there before. Mm-hmm.
So that's a useful thing to have down at the bottom, but a little sneaky thing. You'll notice at the bottom of the screen has this Traveller overlay. If you're doing a video like this, if you just double click on it, it disappears. Then you just get the map unobstructed. But yeah, now that we've clicked on Regina, or we could go to a nearby world like for Bolton and give it a second to load some data. But back to Regina. The box now, instead of showing information about the sector, shows information about that world. And this is a world that, because of the data, we actually know is the satellite of a gas giant. So that's why you see it's sort of got the gas giant behind it. And this is a world where we actually know quite a lot about it. We actually have a picture of it. If you expand that, we have a map, which you can click on. And
Wow.
here's many maps published for Regina with details in there. And it'll give the details of where that's from and information about the world. And if you're like me, you can look at a bunch of these numbers and know what they mean, but the site really tries to decipher all of that data. So it explains it's part of the Third Imperium. It gives details about the star system, the different stars that make it up, what some of the other worlds are, the bases, and then the UWP or world profile. And again, you can drill in and it'll explain what all of that is, where it says the first thing is a starport, and that's excellent. And size 7 is this big, and here's the local gravity, and it's got a lot of water, and here's the population. And you can do that for all of these fields here. You can just drill in and learn more, or just ignore it.
Wow, that's a tremendous amount of information, and it came up pretty fast.
Yeah. So again, this is what's nice is, again, Traveller was invented by a bunch of programmers, and so there's a very compact description. And so as you click on a world, it just has to say, give me just the basic information about that world, and then the web page, the site knows how to decipher that and interpret it. All of these fields. Now, a couple of other things to show off here. One is that if you're playing a game, or especially if you're refereeing a game, and you like this information, you can turn it into a handout just by clicking print. And this probably...
Oh, wow, that's really nice.
Are you seeing that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. I wasn't sure if it had followed that to the next window. So this basically just comes up and it's all ready to print, send to your printer. You can do that for any world.
Super nice.
Yeah, hopefully you're back there. You can generate other things, like you wanted just an image of what some of the nearby stars are, or nearby systems are. You can click. These are all images.
So this is like showing us all the systems within Jump 5. Is that what you clicked?
Exactly, yeah. Call it a jump. And this will follow all of the settings. So whatever you're looking at, whatever you've clicked on, this will update. And then you can also do a fun thing with routes. So, you want to figure out how you get from Regina to, let's say you want to go exploring an asteroid belt over here called Chianti. So you can click jump route and then Chianti. And if you've got a jump 2 ship, here's the route.
Oh, that's cool.
Got a jump 3 ship, you can do it in 2 jumps. Got a jump 1 ship, says you can't do it. Sorry. If you got a jump 2 ship, there's your route. That can be lots of fun.
That's cool. I like how it shows you, sorry, one can't do it at all, but you'll need it too. So that could be some like story something, That's cool.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You want to go to, like, here's a more complex route that you can do with a jump 1. And again, if you want to print this out, just come down here, click print. And if you remember driving cross country in the 90s before the...
Yeah, triptychs or like...
Exactly. This is really trying to evoke that whole triptychs. It's like, here's where you go. You can refuel at the local gas giant. It's an amber zone, so maybe be careful. Again, I wanted to make it super easy for players and referees to use this.
And it's going to take half a year to get there.
Indeed. Jump is slow.
But look at all the stops you got to make along the way. There's 23 stops.
Yeah, that's why you want more than a jump 1 ship.
Mm-hmm.
Really bored. Okay. Other things before you leave search behind. If you hover over it, it'll give you a whole bunch of details about search. Probably the biggest one that people ask all the time is, can I find a world in the Spinward Marches that has this UWP? And the answer is, yeah, you just go in, spin, UWP, like I want to type a starport, And honestly, I don't care about the rest, but I want it to be, I don't know, Tech 15.
Oh, that's cool. I did not know you could do that.
Yeah, a question mark means it can be anything.
That's a
Star,
wild card.
it's a wild card. A star
Okay.
is a wild card. And you can even do what are called character classes. It's not a Dungeons and Dragons reference. You can go like, I want any tech level that's D, E, or F.
Oh man, that's super cool.
There's a lot more you can do with searching. You can search on basically all of the fields, and it just gives you the list. And then you can just, click around on them. It zooms over back to the list. Zoom
Wow,
over.
man, that's super helpful.
Yeah. So that's
great.
search. Yeah.
As a DM, I'm like thinking, I have an adventure that needs to take place on a certain type of world.
Exactly.
Here's how I can find that. Mm-hmm.
You don't have to say in a particular sector or anything. There's more search tips down here. So that's searching. We've got time. I can show off some other things.
Yeah, man.
Okay. So people that are new to
as much time as you want.
Okay. So people that are new to Traveller are like, what are all of these symbols? And that's what it's the best symbol I could come up with for it. But this map key up here, you click on it, and it will explain what all of those little symbols mean.
Very cool.
This world here, Onion has a white star and a white triangle. So it's got an Imperial Naval Base and Imperial Scout Base. And what's another one? Oh yeah, if it's got Greek letters like Yori here, that I know it's hard to tell, but that's a beta. And so this is Research Station beta. And yeah, so you can
cool. Are there any with an anomaly? I want to see the anomaly symbol.
Oh, yeah. So there's an anomaly symbol up here. And let's zoom over into the rift here. There's an example. And anomaly is just a generic term for, we don't have a specific symbol for this on the map, but there's something there. And I don't know what this is in particular. We got no data about it. But presumably if you go off and buy the book, and this is like The Great Rift, book 1 by Martin Doherty. That probably explains Boulder Field. And I'm going to kind of guess from the name that there's like a bunch of asteroid things there. No star, no planets, but maybe a place you can stop and refuel your ship. Over here,
there's a bunch. Okay, I didn't want to sidetrack your tour, but I just I didn't see any of those around on the other map. So
yeah. Yeah, and you might end up in a sector where there's no data, but we know where the stars are, and so that might show an unknown symbol. Okay, so other fun things. The menu up here, this 3- menu, has a bunch of different sets of options. So the map style that the map defaults to is what I grew up with Traveller, which is like the Spinward Marches poster. It's like color on black. But especially if you're going to be printing out maps, you might prefer a different visual style. And so these options let you click through different styles. The first two are basically inverted versions of each other. The third one is very close to the style that Mongoose uses in their books. And it's very different visually. It has every systems zone, like in green zones, called out. It shows the starport and the tech level right in there. You can see that in the normal style if you zoom in far enough. But if you're zoomed out, then the Mongoose style, maybe that's what you're used to.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fun style that was based on an artist just by hand, did a really cool version of a map. And I thought, oh, this just looks like something you'd see in a sci-fi movie. And so I added that style.
Oh, so, very cool.
Not to scale. And a lot of the world images are going to repeat. But this is, there's that. And there's a few more. Mark Miller a few years ago dug up the hand-drawn map of the Spinward Marches and drawn on like wargaming hex paper and done with ink markers. And so I thought that was a cool style to include.
Oh, cool.
And then there was an early publisher of Traveller supplements called FASA. And their maps were much simpler because these things evolve over time, and the people in the early Traveller community learned from each other about what works. But their maps have a really distinctive style. And then one fun one, somebody said, can you make it look like an old 80s terminal? And so that's fun. Something out of the Alien universe.
Very cool.
Yeah. Okay, so those are just visual styles. There's a bunch of options for turning things on and off. One, for example, that the map originally, like if you get the Spinward Marches map from Game Designers Workshop in the 80s, it would have looked much more like this. But I find that it's hard if you're glancing at the map to know what side of the border am I on, unless you know the color. And so filled borders is something that I always turn on. The world colors are in the original Traveller are really simple. They have different symbols for, is it an asteroid belt? Does it have water, like liquid water that you can refuel your ship on, or is it dry? And the reason that they show that and things like Gas Giant are the game is about traveling. And so when you visit a system or planning a trip, you want to know when I get there, am I going to be able to have my ship serviced? What kind of starport is it? Am I going to be able to refuel my ship for free at a gas giant or because it's got water? Because what you don't want to do is jump into a system with no starport and no gas giant and no liquid water. Like there's a reason I guess this one is called Desolate here. Because you better have a plan for getting out of there when you jump in. But you can turn on more world colors. And then people have invented new color coding. And if you want to find out what those mean, you can just go back to the key. And it shows.
Oh, cool.
I tend not to run with those turned on, but they're fun. And then another thing is if we zoom, I'll zoom most of the way out. I'll zoom all the way out and then I'll zoom back in a bit. At this level, you're seeing whole sectors. And some of these are suggested by fans, others are officially, carefully vetted data. And if it matters to you, you can turn on dim unofficial data. And that's just, now you can clearly see these sectors here, the Imperium and some of the nearby sectors, that data has been very carefully reviewed. The ones beyond it, maybe not as carefully reviewed. But again,
awesome.
Never mind. So that's those. There's a bunch of other options, but they're not super exciting. The next tab is what I call experiments, and these are a lot of fun. So let's go back to a world Pixie here and start playing with some of these experiments in good old Regina. If you turn on mains, nothing happens at first. But now when you click on a world, it lights up what are called mains in Traveller, which is all of the worlds that are reachable at jump 1. And some mains are small. I think they've got names like clusters. It doesn't show it if it's under a certain number of worlds because it's kind of obvious. But then you get these what are called the big mains. And if you zoom out, you can see that this sector, the Spinward Marches, has like a super extensive set of interconnected worlds. So the idea is that if you've got a lowly jump 1 ship, you can, in theory, it's going to take you years, but you can get from one part of the sector to another just by single jumps. You click elsewhere,
cool.
and it's going to other mains. There are other mains and clusters and things throughout charted space. So that's a fun one.
Oh, that's cool.
And, again, until you click on a world, it doesn't show up. Okay, so another is importance. Importance is a calculation that was introduced in Mark Miller's Traveller 5. But basically, you can think about it as, how high a population is it? What's the starport? What's the tech level? Does it have bases and things like that? The things that you would naturally kind of assume make a world important or not important. If you click that on, it renders worlds with this sort of ghostly overlay, and the radius of the overlay corresponds to how important it is. So at a glance, you can see sort of what are some of the more important parts of the sector versus the less important parts. Like, oh boy, there's a lot of activity here in the Sword Worlds. But over here in this part, there's nothing super exciting except for Mora. Very similar is population. And this actually scales the area of the circle overlay by the population. So something that's got twice the area literally has twice the population. And because Traveller Worlds, the generation system, is logarithmic, what you end up with is you'll have entire sectors like Lanth sector, or subsectors here, like Lanth subsector, that the entire population is smaller than one world in an adjacent subsector. And so now when you think about, like, space is not all just these jump routes and things. It's got these places that are radically higher population. And so there's going to be a much bigger market if the place has, if the place has a higher tech level or something. Yeah, so that's a fun one.
Yeah,
and
that's pretty cool.
Designing a sector that can be fun for figuring out where should routes go. There's a handful of other overlays for things like which are already capitals, like Regina is the subsector capital and Rylanor is the subsector capital. But what are other worlds that if you were designing a sector that, potentially based on importance or other things, could be a viable capital? And this is good when we're reviewing data and like maybe the person who designed the system or the sector originally didn't call these out. Not everything in charted space is known. A lot of the data is sketchy, but we do know from published works that some of these worlds here that have a little star on them, they're the homeworld of one of the minor races. And the Droin and Chirpers also were around in a lot of worlds in Spinward Marches. And if I go down here, you can see, oh yeah, there's a couple of stars because, Andor and Kandori are notoriously Droin or Chirper worlds. You like exploring ancient sites, that's fine. But some of the more fun overlays, I really like this one, which is normally Traveller is all about the world and the people. But I like looking at the stars. And so if you turn on Stellar, it turns all of that off and just gives you again, it's sort of an abstract representation of what's actually in that star system.
Oh, I see some binary stars. That's cool.
Right. So binary stars are extremely common, and you'll have like a red giant and a red dwarf in the same system, or a white or yellow-white main sequence star that also has a red dwarf companion. There's some fun things, like Regina actually has a big yellow star, this is Regina right here. So it's got a white star main sequence, but it's whiter than Earth's star. And it's actually got a brown dwarf companion and a red dwarf companion. There's some other things out there, some fun stuff. These are not to scale, but the idea is to be representative.
Very cool.
And then plenty of other overlays for things. If you follow the Traveller, the New Era, there was a thing called the Empress Wave that Mark Miller has sort of readapted and re-envisioned for Traveller 5 and his book, Agent of the Imperium. And so you can turn on the Empress Wave. And that just shows somewhere around here. Oh, yeah. Here's this line in space that's marching its way slowly towards the homeworld of the core of the Imperium over time. And speaking of time, the next tab over lets you explore different eras in the Traveller universe. So the one we've been looking at so far is the setting for Classic Traveller and Mongoose Traveller, which is 1105, 1100 years after the founding of the Third Imperium. There are other eras that have been explored. 1120 is one of the eras when the Mega Traveller and the Rebellion was set. The New Era, 1201. Milieu Zero from Traveller 4 was there, and the Interstellar Wars was a very short-lived exploration at the end of the GURPS Traveller run. And then there's the far, far future, which is like what happens nearly 1,000 years after the era we're used to. If you click through those,
you're getting like a completely different data set.
It's a completely different data set. Now, one of the things is people have spent a bunch of time over the last decade or two really trying to clean up the data for those core sectors of the Empyrean, the Spinward Marches, and so on, those official data sets. Nobody spent a lot of time on trying to refine the data outside. So you'll notice that, first off, the borders are wildly incomplete. And that's just because we have some published data from 1120. It's not complete. There are gaps. There are places where we just nobody bothered generating the borders for it. There's endless amount of work to do, but here you can see some of the factions in the rebellion and sectors that were detailed. I don't know why the Spinward March, the Solomania Rim isn't showing up. Seems like that should be there. Who knows? Let's see. We advance forward again to the New Era. And here's some places that are now about to get smashed by the Empress wave. And the real heart of the New Era was down here in these sectors here. I can't even remember the name of those factions there. And then, we go back up here and we jump to well after the Empress wave has gone past. And Charted Space is very different looking, where there are these little bubbles like in the Spinward Marches, and up here around Jadant, that somehow managed to survive the worst of the wave. How did they do that? Maybe you'll learn about that someday. This is a work in progress, but the folks working on that setting are able to send me data, and we can add it to the site and visualize and see what we think. So
awesome.
Over time.
There's so much information there. I mean, look at all those little tiny dots. Yep. Thousands of them.
Yep. Let's see. You can copy links and share it with people. And the last little bit here is links for learning more. You can learn more about Traveller, or you can learn about the forums that people have, more about the TravellerMap site. Probably an important link is credits and data sources, where I mentioned early on when we were chatting that a lot of the work was on just where did all of this data come from? Who has worked on all of these? What are all the books that people published about this? And this doc tries to go into, for every single sector, what is every single book that's mentioned it, and who did what, and what are the authors, just to try and make sure that people are credited and we have the history. And there's probably a lot missing. And then the last thing is really, hey, you want to do your own thing, you've got your own data, you're not using the official data. There's all these tools over here called makers, and the two big ones are the booklet maker and the poster maker. And I'll start with the poster maker. And you can still see this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so poster maker, you can start off and just pick a sector, and I'll just go back to the Spinward Marches. And it loads TravellerMap's data for that. And then the stuff called metadata I'll explain what that does in a second. And then, so basically you pick your data, you pick your options, and then you click quick preview. And it sends that data up to the server and shows the map. And maybe you just want, let's see, you only want subsector A, and you want filled borders, quick preview. You've got that. And then
very cool.
What do you want? Do you want it as a PDF for printing, a bitmap because you're going to stick it on your blog, SVG in case you're doing some image editing? You can choose different styles and so on, and play with the options. And you can use your own data here. And I would say the easiest way to get started with learning about the data is just start messing around with the example here. Like, let's take this first world, 0101 Zaqued, and we want to just change the UWP, so it's got a type A starport and its tech level F. And then quick preview, and boom, it changed. If you're ever having trouble with, like, why did my sector data not render? The easiest thing to do, I find, is come here, start off deleting most of the data. Like, let's say I messed something up, like here. Oop, I got an error, but it's not even I got an error. Let's quick preview. Boom, I did something, and now why is my world not showing up? What's wrong? Pro debugging tip is just delete everything else. Start with the most minimal data set you've got and go, that world's not showing up. Find another world. And actually what I should have done is, let me reload that. Forget that. I should keep two worlds. So first let me break it again. And now I've got, why is that world not showing up? I'm going to leave everything. Sorry, this is taking a long time. Okay, now I've just got those two worlds. Quick preview. Okay, so one world is rendering, one world is not. Why is that one world not rendering? Just start slowly turning one world into a copy of the other. So they queued, okay. And quick preview. Nope, one's not working. Okay, these are almost the same, so I will just change these to be the same. Nani. Oh. And whoa, hey, now these things aren't aligned, so I'll just do this. And quick preview. Nope, still not there. And then eventually you might look at them and go, okay, they're almost the same weight. This one has a Z. That's supposed to be a B. And boom, there you got it. So pro debugging tip, which is, find something that works, something that doesn't work, and slowly mutate them until they're identical. And at some point, something will change, and now you found your bug. That turns out more often than you think. Like, just something is off by a bit. And then,
sure. Well, you meant to like change the digit, and instead of substituting it, you just put the digit in next to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, so that's sector data, and I find it easiest to actually work with like spreadsheets for working with the data, but different file formats. Probably the most complicated thing about producing your own data is, so all of these UWPs that the various books like World Builder Handbook teach you about are get you a sector that, again, will give you something like this. It doesn't have any borders. It doesn't have any routes. It's kind of boring. And the hardest part of authoring a sector is creating what we call that metadata, because we think of the world as the data and the stuff around them, the borders and the routes and the names of the subsectors and everything as the metadata. Easiest thing to do, again, is find an example and take a look at it and see how it's doing it. It is very complicated. It is very nerdy. There's a couple of tools that you can use to help you. One is called the Border Maker. And you just go to travellermap.com/make/border. I get that. Borders, make borders. Sorry. And what you do is you start off with a sector, and when you load it, it will automatically show a high-level overview of these are all the worlds that are populated and what allegiance they have. So in this case, this is one from Aslan Space. So it's mostly Aslan, and so it knows, they're kind of like lions, so they're yellow. It just has a couple of heuristics for colors in there. And it will show all of those as they are. But those aren't borders. That's just the world allegiances. Then you can run an algorithm called calculate borders, and it will attempt to figure out what are the right lines that we should draw to encompass that space. And like a lot of things with maps, there's borders are sort of an artifact of mapping. Like systems have allegiances. Empty hexes don't. So does a border include an empty hex or not? It's sort of artistic interpretation. And it also doesn't extend the borders all the way to the edges. You can click this button called Claim Edges, and it'll actually extend that a little bit. But then it also has this little heuristic that you can, if you click next to some other hexes, it'll toggle the allegiance to match them. So if we're going to assume that these should all be claimed, then I can just start clicking around, and eventually I'll get things. Now you probably can't even see it, but if you were to zoom in real close, these hexes go beyond the edge of the sector, and that's because when you're drawing borders, you have to know, does the border stop at the edge or does it go past it? And the way that's represented is by pretending there's an extra set of hexes around the edge. Anyway, so you just click around in here until you've got, okay, those are, I'm going to say that this is the border that I want. And what it's done down here, while I've been doing all that clicking, is it's generated part of that metadata. And it actually has this description of the border. And it's basically a long list of hexes. And it's the hexes that you'd get if you started in the top left and just go around clockwise around all the hexes along the edge. And sometimes you have to backtrack, but it does that for you. And eventually it goes all the way back to where it started. So it started at 0, 0 and went all the way back to 0, 0. And that's the data format that's used for borders. And you would just basically copy and paste this into the poster maker, and boom, you got your borders. If you do make routes, similar sort of thing. You can copy and paste your own data in here, or it loaded a sector here. In this case, it actually has, oh, I picked a good one. This one actually has borders already, but what it doesn't have is, sorry, what it doesn't have is routes. And here it's actually pretty simple. You just pick a hex and then pick the next one. And pick a hex and pick the next one. And pick a hex and pick the next one. If, oops, I made that one longer than I probably wanted to, so I can just click undo twice, and it undoes the ending and starting point, and I can go there and there. There's no way to really edit it after the fact except for undoing, but you can, again, it'll just generate this and copy and paste this into the poster maker. And then it's got some smarts, like if you load up Kakri or Jadani sectors, it should be smart enough to auto-generate those. So this one looks like it's probably Jadani. Nope. Well, that is, but it's got some weird things. So I will pick a different one. City up, that one I know. I think I generated that sector. Okay. There's not a lot in this, not a lot of Jordani worlds here, but that blue is the Jordani consulate. And so if I click auto generate routes, hey, it generated some routes. Are they perfect?
Cool.
No, they're ugly. One of the most important things to know about routes is they were generated to make the traveler maps look cool. They were not generated to make sense. But it generated them. And then if you click delete intersections, I don't know why that's not doing anything. I thought it would go through and delete where there's routes that actually overlap. Maybe there aren't any that actually overlap. That's nice. That's the problem with these routes, is that any route that actually logically makes sense probably looks ugly. And then you can go in and just, extend and connect these and say, well, that one should connect to that, and that should connect to that, and that should connect to that.
Yeah, super cool.
Copy and paste. So those are the makers. There's lots more. If you click on the about the traveler map, there's more history, more details. But that's the bulk of the functionality and the stuff that, other than building your own application that interacts with the TravellerMap APIs, you now know pretty much everything there is to know.
I noticed the little scale down in the corner changing.
Yeah,
as you zoom in and out. That's cool.
Yeah. And there's all heuristics, like what do you show at each little scale level. One fun thing about maps, traveler maps, is because it's a hex map, sizes are weird. Like if you actually drill into Regina, and actually count, horizontally and vertically, you get different numbers. And it's because when you're going vertically, the hexes pack. They're like one hex right up against the next hex, right up against the next hex. But if you're going horizontally, they zigzag up and down. And so you actually get more hexes in a given space vertically than horizontally, or something. I can never remember which way it is. But the horizontal scale, the vertical scale, if you actually measure Cartesian distances in hexes, don't make sense. So that scale, I think, is probably accurate for horizontal distances because it's a horizontal measurement.
Mm-hmm.
Weird things that you notice when you've been staring at traveler maps for 20 years.
Yeah. Very cool. I think maybe because it was meant to fit on a 8x10 or something, so that's why they made the boxes that big. Or that number. I was wondering, because I was like, if I was to design this from the scratch, why wouldn't you do like 10x10?
Yeah, and it's absolutely it's because that's the size of hex grid or war game paper they could get.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And I asked Mark Miller recently, and he confirmed he's he worked with others, but he was the one behind the information design of this map style. And I think Traveller's coming up on what, its 50th anniversary?
50, yep. Yeah, it's endured, it's
it's things have changed and evolved over time. I mean, I slip in little things, like if you zoom in a little bit more, the symbol used for gas giants has a ring.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always added that. And while I really love the classic Traveller map style for its simplicity, that was just something that was like, oh, that's very clever. And so you zoom in that ring.
Yeah, I like the symbols looking like what they are supposed to be, because like a triangle or a circle doesn't really necessarily tell you unless you've memorized the key. But when you see a little Jupiter, oh, that's a gas giant.
Right. And there's a lot of room for improvement. Like, again, I put something together and came up with some styles, and people suggested some other things, but we could go a lot further with this and experiment more. It's unfortunately, to change the way that the symbols look, someone has to write code. Someone with more time than I've had so far could probably make it more extensible so that you could do like what you do with HTML and CSS, which is somebody writes a style sheet that says, okay, if this world has a type A starport, then render it like this.
Mm-hmm.
And then people could experiment with very different styles. So I'd love to see somebody take that on. But even with having to write code, if somebody was to prototype here's another way to visualize things, like Mongoose has done with their map style, it's not that much effort to change it. I mean, yes, I had to write some code to position these things, but it was mostly just changing numbers.
Mm.
And so, there's a lot of room for iteration. If I had infinite time, one fun thing to do would be to make the map 3D. Which, okay, it's a bit of heresy because space in Traveller is flat.
Mm-hmm.
You can use this little doohickey down here and actually tip the map.
Oh, that's cool.
It's not 3D, it's just tipped. But it would be really fun to be able to like zoom all the way out to see the galaxy and spin the galaxy around and then zoom in to different star systems, all the way to like seeing the planets orbiting the star. You can totally do that. I've got an app on my phone that has real world exoplanets. So it knows about stars that we found in the galaxy that have planets, and there's a lot of them. And you can zoom in and you can actually, scroll forward and backward in time and see all these alien planets zooming around their stars. And zoom out, see the whole galaxy, zoom in all the way to Earth.
Mm.
We can do that on the webpage. It's just a bunch of engineering. So if you're an aspiring coder, the data is all here. It's just a matter of how do I visualize it? How do I get it presented in 3D? It'd be a fun project to work on.
Yeah, totally. I always thought, like, some people do, sometimes you hear in the forums stuff, people complaining about the flat map. I always found it practical. And I guess if you want to, you could stack maps, but, and do like 1 parsec slices, but
yeah,
it just seems like complicating things,
Right. I mean,
are we here to simulate a real map, or are we here to play Traveller, right?
Exactly. The example I always bust out is, chess it's a game that's a simulation of 2 warring armies, but it rarely takes place on an 8x8 grid in real life.
Right.
Don't worry about it. Yeah, I'm definitely not a simulationist.
Right. So,
I'll look at a platonic ideal Traveller world, and we're all seeing approximations of it, but I just don't stress out about it.
Yeah. Okay. So I know that in the last year, because we played together in a Traveller game, we were friends outside of this event, and I know that you had an accident that set you back a bit. You've been recovering for a while from this accident, and I was wondering, in light of this accident, have you made any legacy plans for eventually retiring from Traveller Map?
Good question. I like to lean on the movie Hot Fuzz, and we don't like to use the word accident because that implies no one was to blame. And definitely hit the yes. I want to cast shade, but yes, somebody hit me with their car, so things were a bit rough for a bit. But yeah, I'd already been unpacking the answer. So all of the code and the data for Traveller Map is up on a big open source repository called GitHub. So other people can and have been able to set up their own copies. There's instructions for how to do that. Yes, you're using a weird tech stack, and you have to know a bunch about the server administration, but you can do it. So if I go away, it's possible for somebody to keep this running. And yes, the domain name and everything, that's all in the state plans and everything like that.
All right, cool.
And yeah, so there's that. And yeah, there's always more to think about, like where do we go from here? Are there more tools, or more engineering work that can be done here? What's the right structure to put in place? Yeah, would love to hear from others and continue those discussions.
Awesome. So, are you ready for some silly questions from my tables of questions of interest?
Yes.
All right. Before we get on to that, is there anything else you want to say or mention about Traveller Maps that I don't want to gloss over or move on to the next section? It seemed like we were at the end.
I don't think so. I think I've been talking for long enough. I got really lucky with Traveller Map that I was able to get the basics of it together really quickly, and it's been very, very small amounts of refinement over time. I used to post sort of yearly updates as we were like, oh, here's a whole new bunch of sectors. That's kind of slowed down because we've got nearly everything people want. I occasionally add features. People can suggest things. I've been spending a lot of time on it. I wouldn't consider it done. I'm not unhappy to work on it, but it's also, I think, pretty good. I'm pretty proud of where it is. But that's not to say it's perfect. But definitely, work on it has slowed down, but it's still alive, and I hope it stays alive for another 20 years.
Yeah, the fact that you've been updating it as recently as this year proves that it's still alive and kicking. And man, this is what a great project and what a helpful tool you've made. And yeah, it's something to be proud of as a programmer and as a Traveller player. I mean, it really is a big accomplishment. And I mean, it's like, as far as I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's like the biggest database of Traveller worlds, in the world.
Yeah. I mean, the wiki probably has way more words, but serving different purposes. Yeah, and I'm always happy to hear about people using it in their games. I often hear people like they've got it up on their screen during a game, and it's like, oh, that's perfect. That's why I built it.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. In the game I'm playing in, the GM often puts it up behind his green screen, and we can see where we're at. Or the pilot does it sometimes too. So that's pretty nice.
Yeah.
Josh is the pilot. It's cool to have that up, and you can see like, okay, here we're here, and like, where are we going to go next? And we need to find a planet that has these certain aspects that we're looking for, and there's the map right there. I mean, it's so handy, man. What a great tool. So thank you very much for making that. And let's get on to our crazy questions, and then we'll wrap this up. So I've prepared a table of D66 questions, and here comes the first one. You've opted to allow me to roll for you.
I'm very trusting / foolish.
The first one is number 21. What's your favorite Traveller adventure or campaign you've ever played or run?
Ooh. I had good answer or good answers up until the qualifier of played or run, because my dirty little secret is I've actually played Traveller very infrequently. Like, I played a couple of games when I was in school, and then it wasn't until TravellerCon 2016, 17, the first time I went, that I played Traveller again. And so that was why I really enjoyed going to TravellerCon USA. It's a lot of really fast games. And so there weren't campaigns. On paper, I really like the Secret of the Ancients, and I'm a sucker for the FASA Sky Raiders trilogy, but I've never played either of those.
I was super happy to hook up with Jeremy in your group, because I realized that I've been GMing Traveller since I was 16. I'm 56 now. I've only played as a player like 5 times or something, and that was when I first started playing. So super grateful to like be in this group with you guys. So thanks a lot for welcoming me. It means a lot.
It's delightful escapism. And so yeah, I said I hadn't really played until TravellerCon, and it's been interesting being in this ongoing campaign for a couple of years now.
Has it? Or has it been
Maybe?
a year? It's been a year. A little, maybe a year. A year?
I don't
It
know.
seems like it was after last Mayday that I came on.
Yeah. But yeah, a very different experience, especially the colonies, which are, here's your character, go, great, we're done, on to the next one, versus the ongoing campaign, and
Right, and
learn.
it's cool to we have character improvement rules, so our characters are growing over time, and yeah, I'm really enjoying the company and the people, and everybody has funny characters, and all the characters have great personalities, and yeah, it's funny to see them working together and trying to get along together. Yeah, it's cool. All right, let's do another one.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, 15. What's the most dangerous alien species you wouldn't want to encounter in deep space?
Oh goodness. Well, here's now I'm thinking about the one we ran into in our campaign, which was I don't even know if we came up with a name for it, but appeared on our ship, inside our ship, and started just ripping it to pieces. And we were shooting at it like mad, and it wouldn't go down. And I think we ended up ejecting it out of an airlock. And it then was ripping the ship apart from the outside, and we finally got rid of it and heard reports that it was doing the same thing to other ships. So that was terrifying. Don't know what it was called, but Jeremy, our ref, that was legitimately scary because I don't know if we're all going to make it out of this one.
Right. Yeah. All right. Let's do another. Let's see. If you could install one piece of cyber gear on yourself, what would it be and why?
Ooh boy. Well, the topical answer. Well, that's not cybernetic. No. You go with a whole new knee at this point. That the one I've got is healing. It's got plenty of metal in it now.
You're like a tech level 7 cyborg.
Yeah. I don't know. Like as a teenager, young adult, I was all about give me the brain implant. I want to be in a William Gibson novel. With watching how people are pushing those without wanting oversight, and also knowing how computer security has gotten harder and harder and harder over time, I'm quite happy to not have something plugged into my brain. That's not to say it will all be negative. Like if I had a disability that could be treated by an implant, I would grab it. I would love to be able to see in infrared or ultraviolet. But no, at this point, there's not one that I'm going to go say, yes, slap that silicon into my head.
I remember once my mom asked me if brain implants were real, if I would go for when I was on Mom, I'd be the first in line.
Yeah.
I was a teenager at the time. I was like, what could go wrong?
Yeah. I mean, one of my science fiction authors is Greg Egan, and one of his he's actually had several stories around the same idea, but one of them is you get a brain implant when you're young, and it learns to be you, and then by the time you're an adult, your actual squishy meat brain is just redundant. And they can scoop it out, and now you've got you're immortal, because they can always transplant that kernel of you into a new body, or with the speed of light to a new location and something. And short stories like that are written to raise ethical questions and the what if something goes wrong and something like that. Do I think that's possible without getting massively abused? Sadly, probably not. But I will have to also mention that a few years ago, I discovered one of the books that I had as a kid, like literally probably 10 years old. It's called My Trip to Alpha Centauri. And it's a very short book, again, written at probably the 10-year-old set. And the premise of the book is the kid is going to visit his family. He's on Earth. He's going to go visit an Alpha Centauri. And what do? They record his brain onto a tape, and they beam the tape to Alpha Centauri, and they put him asleep while he's in Alpha Centauri. And then while he's at Alpha Centauri visiting his family, he inhabits a robot body. And then when it's time to come home, they download his brain back onto the tape, beam it back to Earth. Now, like, I hadn't even thought about this, that this is like transhumanist fiction for 10-year-olds written in the early 80s. And it's like,
oh, yeah, right. Yeah, I was reading recently some old I was rereading some H.P. Lovecraft, and The Whisperer in Darkness is just like one of my favorite stories. And like that's one of the things, like scoop your brain out and stick it in a canister and fly it off to Pluto or wherever they go, their other dimension. Yeah, that's you want to go into like another world? Here you go. Sorry, it's in a canister. Yeah. So, Josh, if people wanted to contact you regarding Traveller Map, is there a preferred method? Are you on the socials? Is there a contact button on the site?
My email address is listed on the About page of the site. I know email is old and passé. I think I'm on all the Traveller Discord servers. My social media presence, I'm on Blue Sky, Mastodon, but I'm very rarely checking or updating them right now. I started taking a break from the socials. So, email, or I do, again, keep an eye on Traveller Map discussions on the Discords.
Right. All right, cool. Let me see if I can bring myself up here. I'm not sure how to get it. There we go. Cool. All right. Well, Josh, thanks so much for joining me today and telling us more about your Traveller Map project. It really is a great tool, and thanks for sharing your knowledge and expertise of Traveller with us today.
Thank you. It's always fun to chat with you, Frank. And I'm just, again, always super glad to hear about people who are using the site, using it in their games, using it for fun, or how they reconnected with Traveller or connected with Traveller for the first time because of the site. So
awesome.
Thank you to everybody out there who uses it.
All right. And thank you again. My guest today has been Joshua Bell of Traveller Map. And until next time, my friends, happy traveling.
Happy traveling. Happy Mayday. Hang in there, Beowulf.
Help's coming. Don't fly solo through the galaxy. Click like to join our alliance. Subscribe for your crew pass, and enable notifications to never miss an encounter. This journey is fueled by my patrons. Thank you, patrons. Feel the thrill of discovery. Become a patron and join the adventure.